Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our weekly office hours. This week, I'm really excited to be joined by Logan Hendrickson, who's going to be diving into a really awesome checklist for high converting B2B product pages. So, I think that so many of us are trying to figure out how do we actually drive conversions, how do we add value on domain, right? And so Logan is the best in at least this side of the galaxy. Logan, I don't know about the other side, but for the folks out there, if you do have any comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and comment on LinkedIn here, or if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll go ahead and grab those and sprinkle them through. We'll definitely have some time here at the end for a Q&A. But real quick, Justin, I know you are my, what do we say, right hand? No, what do we say? We say partner in crime.
That's
Uh,
right.
just real quick, just wanted to kind of just also say, it's great to have Justin here, who's always on these office hours with me. But Logan, real quick, maybe you can tell folks a little bit about your background and how did you actually become like the expert in B2B product pages?
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for having me. And good to see both of you guys. And I don't know if I'll see the comments or what. I'm sure I'll figure them out. But yeah, happy to answer any questions. I was been a product marketer for several years, which is like the short answer of how I got into product pages. And before that, I was in sales. And when I was in sales, I was always pretty obsessed with like the words we used, and it made a very natural shift to get into product marketing. And I think sales enablement is often that for salespeople, and so I kind of was like, okay, cool, I can do some of that stuff, and very quickly would just gravitate towards like writing copy for email sequences or figuring out how to do stuff on a landing page. And it's kind of a cliche, but like marketing is sales at scale, so I'm like, if I can just figure out how to sell the thing I'm selling really well to lots of people at once, then that's even better. And I feel like the website is still the best place to do that. And a product page is still the place that most people who are actually shopping kind of land. And you have an opportunity to basically sell them your thing. And so I just feel like there's an opportunity for lots of businesses to do a lot better with those, and that it will make their whole all parts of their life at work easier.
That's awesome. Your background is actually pretty similar to mine in a way. So I started in sales as well, and also was very obsessed with the way that we like position the product and the way we discussed or described the product. I think that's probably a sign that product marketing is in your future if you are a salesperson that has sort of affinity for those things. But really interesting to hear how you sort of narrowed in on the product pages as sort of your beat. I'm curious, before we get into your checklist, which I'm really excited to get into, why do you think? I get a sense that product pages, definitely, like you said, they're high intent. That's where a lot of conversion happens. But we see a lot of guides out there and content out there that's focused on things like the homepage, right, or the pricing page, all these other pages, and less focus on product pages. Why do you think that is? Being such a high intent page, why do you think
Yeah,
it doesn't get the love that some of these other pages get?
I have that same question, honestly. I'm like, why are we sleeping on these pages that if you look at the data, I think, well, maybe I was about to answer my question with kind of what I was saying, but um, when you look at the data, like in Google Analytics or whatever, on it for an individual website, it's not always that the top ranked, like in terms of volume of traffic. But when you can dig deeper and you're like, where are people who land on the pricing page eventually coming from? Like that, I think, is often the product pages. And so I think maybe part of it is like we only have time to focus on a couple pages. And so we hit the homepage, the pricing page, and the demo page. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
when I was in house, that's like what we were always making better. And then we look at our product page and you're like, oh my gosh, like we've been out, these are outdated by months. The only time we would update it is if we had a big product launch. and then we'd like go to that one section and like make sure we update the language or the screenshot or whatever. And so it's a good question. I think it's mostly just a time thing, maybe, or it's like we have so many. It's just one of the product marketing assets that we need to deliver. But I'm kind of for I'm like trying to make the case that it should be like kind of your best one, because it's the one that people can stumble upon and like find, but no one's gonna just like stumble upon a one pager or like a deck, you know. So yeah, I think home pages are kind of like overrated because they get all the attention. But if somebody's really shopping, they land on your homepage for like a second and then they bounce to the product page because they're like, okay, yeah, this is what I thought it was. This is like, I'm in the right spot. I'm in the right grocery store. And I go right to the aisle that I'm like trying to buy my stuff from, you know.
Awesome. Well, just real quick, we got folks tuning in from Spain and the SF Bay Area. So thank you so much for joining us. And let's dig into the checklist. And by the way, folks, real quick, again, if you do have any questions, comments, or feedback for us here, go ahead and add them. This is the time. But yeah, I'm excited to dive into the checklist.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it. Let's figure out how to share my screen. And I got it. Yes.
We love Spain. I actually have family in Spain, so that's cool. But I just love Spain. I can't get enough of the queso manchego and all the tapas. Anyways,
I love Spain, and I've never been to Spain, but I love the idea of going.
It is awesome.
It sounds awesome. Okay, so this is just a very simple doc that anyone, I don't know if we'll send this to you afterwards, or you can just go to my website, loganpmm.com, and it's like the first thing you see if you just put your email in. But it's just this like very high level. I'll just kind of zoom through it quickly, and then we can like spend a little bit of time on a couple of the sections. But it's basically, if I'm building a product page or looking at one and kind of like figuring out, is it doing well or where there are opportunities to like improve, this is just the checklist I go through. So I go through the hero section, social proof, what I call a problem section, the features, something called show me, which is basically just like what it sounds like, show what it actually does. These can look like videos, demos, GIFs, lots of different things, you know, figuring out how to talk about some use cases, and then CTAs. It gets a little bit more bare at the bottom because it's kind of some common sense stuff, but the most important sections, as you would assume, start at the top, and the farther you scroll, the more specific you can get, but also statistically, the less people who are reading those things. So you really want to stack rank the value at the top of the page. And just some reasons why this matters we talked about, but like it's often one of your most viewed pages, but we don't really see that. And 70% of a buying decision happens before anybody clicks get a demo. And a lot of that is like happening with conversations, asking for referrals, all that stuff. But like that's a lot. Like people are pretty far down the path before they go to your website and click get a demo. And I would say, I don't have the stat to back this up, but like people are definitely looking at your page, you know, like they're reading your website before they click that button, especially if how they're getting to you is from a button on your website. So I just think it's pretty obvious that these things matter and we want to take time to look at them. So I'm going to go through a couple of the bullets on this hero section, just because that's like the first thing you see. It's what a lot of people care about, you know, and if you don't nail this, no one's going to scroll through the rest. So the first thing is there a clear and obvious primer? Eddie Schlainer calls it a primer. I don't know. That's where I learned it. I don't know if that's common vernacular or not, but it's basically, if you think about usually in the eyebrow text, just like the most straight-laced, this is exactly what we're getting. So it would be like a CRM for small businesses, like basically your category that you're in. Like you need to have that very clearly at the beginning so that people can say, okay, I'm in the right, like we talked about, in the right aisle. You know, it's like whatever it says, baked goods or something in the aisle that you're in. Then you can talk about your headline, where it needs to be still clear, still concise, but you can start getting more like creative, and you can start peppering in some more of like, there's lots of, approaches to a headline. It's like, are you positioning against something? Are you trying to be, there's a lot we can talk about with headlines, but basically it needs to be really short. And then instead of like this example, instead of the primer of like the big category of canned beverages, now you're getting more specific. We're like sparkling water, flavored water, whatever, and then the sub headline underneath that is where you're getting even more specific. And I like thinking about it like, what's the job that your buyer is trying to do, and kind of talk about your product or your service as doing that job. I think I'll just go through this really quick, and then I have an example that maybe we can just look at of something I saw literally like 20 minutes ago. Is there a CTA above the fold? Pretty obvious. Just like there needs to be a way for people to say, cool, I'm interested in this before I scroll. Boring and clear is better than clever and confusing. So it might sound really good, but if somebody lands on it and they don't actually know what it is, it's just a waste. And I think a good rule of thumb is if you can show your page to just total random strangers, like they have nothing to do with your industry, even tech, and they're like, if they could squint at it and be like, okay, I like kind of get, like, I think I sort of understand. That's clear enough. And then if they're your ICP, they're just like, oh, it's so odd. Like, it's almost boring. It's like, yes, of course, that's what this is. This is what I live and breathe every day. And then the last thing on the image, I think an image is better than a video typically, because you need a little bit of buy-in before somebody wants to click on a video. And you should not have any image that if you copy and pasted it onto a competitor's website, it would not look out of place. So like, you should have enough of your branding, or it should be specific to your actual screenshots, or it should be unique to something to where if I drug it over to a different page, I would look at it and be like, that doesn't make sense right there. So I basically, for each section, for anyone who like gets this and wants to use it, I've just got these like guidelines, and then I've got basically a little checklist of you can look at your page and see. So I found this, somebody who works at this company connected with me on LinkedIn today. I was like, I think I've heard of this. I looked at it. I have no affiliation with them. I literally saw this for the first time like 20 minutes ago. But if we think about the checklist, the first thing I notice is that what I would do is I would add a primer, little text right here that kind of tells me what type of AI thing is this, because you kind of have to read most of this to figure that out. And I don't know what their category is called. AI is hard because it's like AI is the category sort of, but it's like there's so many subcategories. But basically, I would try to figure that out, like retail, in brick and mortar, something like that. This is good. This is like a stock image, but it's pretty like all this branding, all these colors. Like I feel like this is pretty cool. The data you've been missing is walking through your store. I think it's 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like 10 words. So that hits my checklist, but I feel like it could be a little bit more. It gets me to be like, what do you mean? And then I want to read the next one. But I feel like it could get a little bit more clear. And then this is when it starts to get like, okay, vision. I'm not clear until I read the rest of it that is the name of a product. And so I need that. Like this is the name of the company, but this is the name of the product, but there's not a drop down for other products. Like that's also a little interesting. And then it kind of tells you what it does. It continuously analyzes security footage to deliver real-time shopper insights. Kind of sounds like fluff a little bit, giving retailers and brands, okay, that's who we're trying to talk to. The same level of measurement in physical stores as e-commerce. Like this, I'm like, whoa, cool, I finally get it. Like that makes total sense. And then I look over here and I'm like, oh, cool, impressions. Like so what you're going to do is you're going to use cameras to see the same kind of data that you get on your Amazon store, like in your actual real store. Like if I land on a page and that's the claim that they're making, I kind of should be like, holy smokes, that sounds like a big deal. That's really cool. And I feel like you have to dig a while to get there. So we could go all the way through this page. I have like a lot of thoughts on the
One
rest
thing
of it.
that's interesting. So I was, prior to this conversation, a big believer in, like always put the video in sort of the hero, more from the perspective of like, it's interactive, right? Rather than this static image. But I totally see your point here, because to be honest, the thing that made me understand what this product does the most first here was the image, right? Sort of that illustration of the prices and things like that while she's looking at products in store. And I don't know that I would have spent the time, like you said, watching a video.
Yep.
So now I can see how that like interaction where you just want them very, very quickly to understand what this thing is, and images can really do a good job of that. But then below there's a video, if they want to then sort of learn more, right?
Yeah, and I've seen it. So this other example I actually have pulled up, Chili Piper, they've got like an animated thing, which works too. This is
That's
like,
nice.
I don't have to click it and wait, but I can figure out, okay, this one's a little more obvious for people in this world, at least. It's like chat. I get what chat is. But it shows all the steps. You still have to sit and watch the whole thing if you want, but it's better than a video. And I've tried at my last company to have an image that then you could also click into to play the video, but that has some problems where either it looks weird and it's not super obvious that it is a clickable video, or like, you kind of can't do both really well if you're trying to do both. So yeah, I think having an image really complement the text is a great place to start.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. There's a couple of sort of questions that I had here. If you think about like what makes, and I know you've alluded to some of these things, but maybe kind of at a high level, when you've identified certain attributes or elements of these high performing product pages, are there any sort of elements that really just stand out that that these high performing pages always tend to have?
Yeah. I mentioned like a problem section. I think I'm seeing that become a little bit more standard, and I didn't see that all the time. But I think right below the fold, having some sort of like, this is the problem that we're solving. Um, it does two things. It kind of, if you do that well, your bounce rate might, well, not bounce rate, but your time on the page might like go down, but your conversion rate might go up, because I think it's kind of like being super clear in your, like, I don't know why this came to mind, but like a dog grooming shop or something that's like, we work with poodles. Whatever problems poodles have, I don't know. Maybe they have a certain type of problem that their hair grows, and I don't know. But like, if I like walked up to a store and I saw we solve this specific problem, then I'm like, cool. Either I'm going in or I'm not. And so you kind of just like put your like stick in the ground, whatever, flag, early. So I think I see that when I see like really articulating the problem, they tend to perform well, instead of all value, all possibility, lots of like big like claims. That usually does well.
We had a question from Lenki. Out of curiosity, do you keep in mind three types of visitors, or I guess, do you have a sort of an idea of like three types of visitors a website could cater for when working on a product page? So I don't know if this is maybe industry jargon here, but
Yeah, this is that analogy I've not heard, but it makes sense. I like it. Skimmers, swimmers, and divers. I would say that in my experience, product pages are closer to the latter half of swimmers and divers. Like if you're landing on a page. Like you want to write your home page and some of your, honestly, even like the about page and the careers page, like pages that get a ton of volume, but maybe not who are actually buying. You're gonna write those for your skimmers and maybe like get them towards becoming a swimmer where you're like getting a little bit more detailed. But I think you can't, you're not gonna go wrong if you write your product page assuming they're pretty invested in, like, I know I'm problem aware, I'm solution aware, I am pretty I know where I'm at. I'm willing to read. However, skimmer in another term, another like phrase of the same word, you still got to write your page to be like highly skimmable. You know, like you're not gonna get people to just read buckets of text. But yeah, I think divers are the ones that are on those product pages, and then eventually the pricing page.
Awesome. It looks like Al, thank you so much for tuning in. Really like this this kind of framework here of thinking about these different visitor types.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's a cool way to think about it, and it'd be an interesting exercise to look at your website and then kind of like pin, what are we writing each page for? Like, who are we writing for? Because a lot of times people do that with personas, you know, and they're like, the champion is the one who's going to go all the way down the line. But they're trying to write the homepage for like the buyer eventually, or like the, you know, and I think that's, there's a lot to be said about that too. But I think you should think about, yeah, how invested are they in this? Or am I the CEO who goes to the homepage and like, yeah, let's add that to our short list and then send it on to somebody who's actually going to go do the buying.
Awesome. You know, I know that if you think about kind of the biggest mistakes that you've seen in messaging or positioning, are there any things that sort of stand out when as it relates to the product pages that you've seen?
Yeah, oftentimes I think this could be a bandwidth thing or something, but I think that if you have multiple products or multiple use cases of a product or multiple like personas who can use your product, I think as long as you can organize them in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, like you should have a page specific. You should try to make a page that's specific for each. I think there's too many are trying to be like, we are the big platform that does this for everyone. And then you try to jam so much like value prop messaging into a single page that's when it starts to feel like really confusing, really overwhelming, lots of words, tons of scrolling. So that's maybe a symptom of the problem, but I think just really long pages, really full of text, and not very specific and concise and clear are always the ones that are like, yeah, we've worked on this page, but then people go to it and nothing happens. And there's other stuff where it's like I said, you got to really think about it like a funnel. You have to have some exit points as you scroll through. You want to make sure you lead. Like when you get to a feature section, which is a lot of it, you know, a lot of a product page we didn't talk about yet, but you want to make sure you lead with like your best feature. It sounds obvious, but maybe your feature, you like do something really cool, but every other competitor does that same thing. Like maybe don't lead with that and just assume that if they're buying your stuff, they know that you do XYZ, is because every company that does what you do does XYZ. Like lead with your most differentiated stuff, lead with the thing that your customers talk about the most, even if you don't personally get that excited about it. Like I worked with a client that they're like, our dashboards are the thing that people talk about all the time. And I was like, well, then let's make that the first thing that we talk about. And to them, it's like, yeah, but that's like just table stakes. It's boring. And I'm like, but no one else does these specific dashboards. So it's that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And we had a couple statements here about, just folks really enjoying product pages. You know, Al asked, how do we optimize product pages to answer common questions that prospective customers ask of AI chatbots?
As you mentioned, 70%. Increasingly, that's done using AI. So, optimizing the page so that you show up in a chatbot. That is a great question that I do not know the answer to. Although I'd say common kind of thinking about that is basically have the right answers to the questions, just the same as SEO. It's just a different thing crawling it. But I'm not an SEO expert. I don't really know how to give you advice on that. But I would say that like FAQ sections are still definitely a viable thing on a product page. Usually that is kind of an SEO play. But honestly, they get a ton of clicks. I know I've seen like Taz Bober, who does like landing pages. I've seen her talk about like oftentimes people will scroll to the very bottom and click on all those FAQs pretty quickly, which is interesting. So that's something you could think about too.
I don't know that we'll be able to get through the full checklist, but is there any other section that you wanted to cover? I know the meat of it, let's say we talked about the sort of the header. I think like you said, stuff at the bottom, the CTA and stuff like that is pretty standard, but maybe in the sort of the meat of the page, the features or anything like that, anything that recommendations or suggestions that you have?
Let's just go through it really quick and see. So we talked about the problem section. So I'll just show you the checklist part. It's like, does it clearly explain the problem that your audience faces? Is it framed from the customer's perspective? Oftentimes people think about the problem and they accidentally think about their own business problem. Are there emotional words? Like you want to use some words that are actual painful words that they might be experiencing. There's no jargon. Like I said, you can read it to your neighbor or your uncle and they'd get it. And scanning it. This is kind of true of every section you'll see, but if I scan this section, am I curious enough to scroll to the next section? And so just to double click on the features, are we leading with our best foot forward? So that's what I'm saying. If like people are zooming through your site, you want to put your best thing first. You want to put your most differentiated thing first, and you want to use visuals on all of those too. And are the features presented in a simple, easy to scan list or grid? I'm a fan still of like the classic kind of left, right, left, they have it here eventually where it's like, bam.
I think that's a mistake you pointed out. A mistake a lot of people make is they will sort of order it in order of the workflow versus what is the most differentiated or the most like unique feature.
Yeah, I actually do like having a separate section that's kind of like how it works, this says how to get started. And so this might be them trying to do that. But if you're doing that, you should have it very clear, like step 1, this is the thing. Step 2, then you do this. And I like showing it in like visually. But I'm with you. I think a lot of people will like do it in the flow, but then you start with like onboarding. You're like, well, that is so lame. That's not a cool part of my product. And then we talked about this too. Would a random person understand it, but your ICP fall in love with it? So I think that kind of covers the stuff. It's pretty much like your best stuff first. Each feature ties back to a real pain point. We have real UI in the images. It's simple, it's scannable, and it gets me curious to scroll. So
awesome.
I'm not a big like, this is a checklist, it's not like a template. I think why product pages are cool is they can look a lot of different ways. They don't have to be exactly the same all the time, but short is good always. Like leave them wanting more rather than getting bored.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we have a couple questions that have come in. I know we're up here on time, but maybe Logan, we can dig into some of those questions from folks on the actual comments section here. Thank you so much, Logan, for your time. Really appreciate it. If folks wanted to maybe learn more about how to work with you or maybe follow some of your insights, what are the best URLs or handles to reach you?
Yeah, just me on LinkedIn is good. I talk about this stuff, and then my website's loganpmm.com, and you'll find that checklist. And then, yeah, I'm also always open to chat, so you can find my calendar on my site too.
All right, awesome. And for the folks out there, thank you so much for joining us. If you are a AssetMule user, thank you so much. If not, you can absolutely check it out. It's completely free to kick the tires on, and have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone.
See ya.